So what makes a good bass player versus a great bass player? Not that either one is bad. Obviously, the great one is not bad. The good one is not bad. But let's dive into, in my opinion, the differences. So as a good bass player, are you going to get gigs? More than likely you are. You're going to be a serviceable musician. But the top three things I would say that make you a good bass player, the first one is understanding chords and structures. So to play in a band setting, there's a few like things that are non-negotiable, right? So you have to be able to have some kind of understanding of chords, and structures. Let me dive in very, very surfacey. So if we're playing in the key of C, and the groove is just, we're going from the 1 to the 4, right? So chords, if it's 1 to 4 and both are major, you would know that, right? You can play some kind of line leading into that major E. So you got to know some kind of knowledge of structure and chords. Now, what's to say that you couldn't just stick on the 1 and then go to the 4? You could, all right? You could. But you have to know a little bit more, I would say, to make it interesting. Let's go to the number 2 one. The number 2 one would be rhythm, right? So you have, as a good bass player, you've got good rhythm. So if you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, like if I'm playing off beat, it's not a good thing. You're not going to get calls, right? So you want to be able to lay it right on the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right? So, but can you play more complex rhythms? Complex rhythms. So, there goes some things that take you from basic to like, oh wow, they're pretty good, right? Because they're able to play different rhythms, same chords, right? But it's more syncopated. Some people can only stick that 1. Okay? Does that mean that you're bad? No. It doesn't mean that you're bad. But if you want to be really good, right? You got to practice different rhythms. Because you don't want to become somebody who is, I would say, less creative in what you're offering within the band setting. So you want to be able to bring creativity. So rhythm would be my second one. You have good rhythm, and you can have more complexity to the structures of what you're playing. The third one is going to sound so funny, but it's so obvious. You have to be able to play in tune. All right? So let me do something here. I'm going to go ahead and... All right, so we're playing the same thing. Wow, it's pretty close. Let's make it obvious. All right? By that time, when you hit that note, the band's all looking around like, who's hitting that note? Who's ever heard that before? Hopefully not you, right? So I've been around when I've heard stuff like that. It's funny, when my son was like 5, I did that to him on purpose, and he screamed like, what are you doing? Because it's taking everybody off. Like, the audience is even listening, and they're like, what's going on? Something's off. So you got to be able to play in tune. Hello, link in the description below. But even just a simple tuner like this, and being able to hear if you're off, right? If you're off, you should be able to get yourself back in tune by training your ear, right? I mean, you don't have to have perfect pitch, but using one of these is vital. So that's my top 3 things for being good. But what takes you to great? To me, great, I'm going to end with a fluffy one, right? But let's start with the first one, pocket. Can you stick a good pocket? Let me take this right? Can you lock that thing in with the drummer? That's number 1. You want to provide a very solid pocket, because within the pocket, as you're locking with drums, it allows the band, it allows the singer, it allows everyone else that's there to kind of exercise their creativity. But if you're all over the place, right? You're just doing all kind of stuff. Are you in the pocket? No, you're so out of the pocket, right? And you're trying to show off, which is one of the next things that I'm going to talk about is number 2, being musically appropriate. If you are a great bass player, see, a lot of times people think that great bass playing or great musicianship is just your ability to flash, right? And play all of these licks and all of these crazy things and slapping, all these things. Those things might be cool when it's musically appropriate, but there's a such thing as musically inappropriate, right? So if you're playing and you're just playing every lick, right? So you're just going off and doing whatever you're doing. It's like you're having your own worship of yourself, right? Because you're like, wow, I did this in practice and I feel so good. But then all of a sudden, you look around just like when people were out of tune and they were like, what is going on, right? So that's number 2. Like, a great bass player is going to be musically appropriate, and you're going to do what's needed for that gig. You're going to do what's needed for that genre, for the artist, whatever is needed, because you were hired, you were asked to come in to play this role. So what is appropriate? And if you don't know, listen, a great bass player is going to ask. He's going to ask the artist. He's going to ask the music director. He's going to talk with the drummer. Like, how do we lock in? If something's not locking in practice or in sound check, let's talk about it, because I want to be a great musician. I want to provide the maximum amount of value that I can to that band. And the last thing is being prepared, which I said it was fluffy, right? It's like a fluffy thing. It's not some skill. Well, it is a skill. Let me rephrase that. But it's not something that you put in all the time right here. But being prepared, yeah, it does have to deal with coming in knowing your music. When you come into a rehearsal situation, know your music. It's not a time for you to learn it like, oh, hold on, let me figure out this chord change. I mean, if you have to figure out something because it was hard to figure out on your own, maybe. But you're coming in knowing like 90 to 95% of the structure of that music, your parts, and you're nailing them. Because practice is reserved for putting things together, all right? Being prepared, being on time, that is being a great bass player, because if you're not on time, guess who's suffering? The rest of the band. These are things that fall under the realm of professionalism. Also, being able to be a team player. If you want to be professional, you have to be a team player. So all of these things come into being prepared, right? As a team player, your mind is prepared to handle if there's something going on that was not planned, right? If the amp goes down, or you have to wait on the drummer because they broke a head and you're not just noodling. Noodling is when you're just playing, right? So all of these things, being prepared mentally, being a good hang, that's so underestimated. You don't want to be the person that's just coming in and just the chatterbox, right? I mean, if you're a chatterbox personality, just find a way to make it appropriate for the setting, because you don't want to be the person that where they're like, oh man, he won't shut up. Or if you're a super quiet person, which sometimes I tend to be, it's totally fine, you know? Try to make some conversation. because you want to be a good hang. But I'd rather be quiet than too loud. Not doing things that would draw attention to yourself in a negative way. All of these things, believe it or not, they don't even have to do, half of them don't have to deal with playing this instrument. They just have to deal with being professional. So these are the things that make you or take you from good to great. Not everything is based on the amount of circles you can run around some other player because you've played 8 hours a day and you practiced and you could play every note on this instrument. Listen, if you're not professional, you will never be great. Just leaving you with that thought in your mind. I'm going to say it again. If you're not professional, it doesn't matter how good of an instrumentalist you are, you will never be great because you'll be a great player all on your lonesome. So aim for the stars, but let's put all these things into practice, including the professional part of it. Hope you're getting good value out of this. Like, subscribe, hit bell notification for more content like this, and I'll see you around.